Welcome to this special edition of Flourishing Leadership. I'm your host, Guy Rogers, and I have some really exciting news to share with you. I know. Very exciting is a phrase that's really overused, but in this case, I believe it fits. That's because I'm pleased to announce the release of my new book, Emails with Martin, a biblical lens into the worldview, thinking, and behavior of the secular left. Before I dive into a description, here's how you can get a copy. So if you're at a place you can write a few things down, this would be a time to do it. Currently, it's available in a PDF version. What's good about this for you is that you can click through any of the many dozens of links to the stories, articles, and op-eds contained in the book. To get a copy, send me $8 via Zelle to, and here's my email address, Guy.Rogers, and Rogers is Rodgers, Guy.Rogers at flourishing-leadership.com. Then send an email to that address indicating the email address for me to email you the book. This is a copyrighted work, so while I can't control whether or not someone shares it, I ask that if you want to share it with others, and I would hope you would, you make a payment of $75 and I'll grant you unlimited rights to share it with anyone and everyone you choose. I hope you do choose this second option, as this will help the book get greater distribution more quickly and thus have a greater impact. If you prefer not to use Zelle, you can mail a check for either amount made out to Flourishing Leadership and mailed to 1380 Regatta, that's Regatta Lane, Monument, Colorado, 80132. Now, on to the book. In 2014, a boyhood friend I had lost touch with for nearly 30 years found me through Facebook. Martin, which is not his real name, was my closest friend other than my brother. I was genuinely pleased that he found me, looking forward to renewing our friendship. But I soon discovered that the man who found me after all those years was anything but the happy-go-lucky kid and young man I once knew. It became clear that Martin had thoroughly embraced the ideology of secular leftism. And over the next 6 years and through hundreds of emails, I saw, up close and personal, the tragedy of how the devotion to this ideology had helped transform my friend into an angry, raging, hostile, and bitter older man. As I state in the overview of my book, I witnessed the glaring, willful self-deception, the refusal to entertain even the most obvious facts if they challenged secular leftism, the stubborn, illogical denial of reality, the unyielding devotion to and faith in a thoroughly failed ideology, and the personal attacks, ad hominem tactics, and character assassination, all of which are hallmarks of secular leftism. No matter how familiar or unfamiliar you are with this ideology, I am confident you'll find that my new book is a unique lens into secular leftism, unlike any book you have read or will read about this ideology, a manageable read of 114 pages. Here are some excerpts and observations from the book. Chapter 2, Defining Secular Leftism, opens this way. Let's begin with what secular leftism is not. A term commonly used to describe those on the left is, quote, progressive, as in progress. Secular leftism is anything but progressive. In fact, it is destructively regressive. What I mean by this is the totalitarian, crime-perpetuating, tribal, and institutionally destructive nature of secular leftism is not progressive, but rather a lurching back in time to when humanity suffered oppression and injustice that were the consequences of the hallmarks of today's secular leftism. This chapter will help you attain a full-fisted grasp of just what secular leftism is. In Chapter 3, titled Silencing the Messenger, I reveal the many vicious and dishonest attacks on my character that my once close friend leveled at me. I demonstrate how this tactic is central to secular leftism because it is an ideology that is impossible to honestly defend in a free marketplace of ideas, and how this tactic is intended to shut down debate and discussion. Readers will, I believe, be stunned, as I was, at how aggressively my friend attacked me. Just think a minute. If a once close friend could treat a friend this way, merely because they hold diametrically opposed viewpoints, then it should come as no surprise that secular leftists will attack with a vengeance anyone who disagrees with them. I then document example after example of how the secular left employs everything from coercion, threats, and intimidation to the power of government to silence any opposing voice, no matter how reasonable or well-informed. As aware as I was of this tactic, what I discovered in my research was the enormous volume and rabid extremism of attacks by the secular left on the freedom of speech. This included reports from the U.S. House Judiciary Committee on how government agencies are monitoring those who take issue with the, quote, woke secular left narrative. Here's just one example, quote, federal investigators have asked banks to search and filter customer transactions by using terms like MAGA and Trump as part of an investigation into January 6th, warning that purchases of religious texts could indicate extremism, the House Judiciary Committee revealed Wednesday. The report continues. FinCEN, which stands for the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, warned financial institutions of extremism indicators that include, listen to this, transportation charges such as bus tickets, rental cars, or plane tickets for travel areas with no apparent purpose, or the purchasing of books, including religious texts, and subscriptions to other media containing extremist views. Committee Chairman Representative Jim Jordan detailed in a letter to the former director of FinCEN, Noah Bischoff, a career employee. It continues, in other words, FinCEN used large financial institutions to comb through the private transactions of their customers for suspicious charges on the basis of protected political and religious expression, Jordan wrote. Now, my friends, words like alarming are not strong enough to describe where our government is going to suppress free speech views that differ from the prevailing woke narrative. In one email exchange where we were discussing racism, Martin exclaimed, quote, white people can't invoke bigotry or racism, idiot. I explained why he believes this and how the very definition of racism has been changed by the secular left to not merely allow, but even encourage and incentivize racist attacks on groups that are deemed, quote, oppressors. As you might guess, the oppressors are whites, particularly white males and Christians. This too serves to silence dissenting voices. In chapter 4, titled Hypocrisy Be Thy Name, I list dozens of examples where secular leftists don't merely engage in hypocrisy, they revel in it. Martin reflected this hypocrisy with beliefs he revealed in many of his emails. Here's but one example of secular leftist hypocrisy. Quote, in February 2023, a Christian high school girls basketball team in Vermont forfeited a game rather than play against a team that had a male claiming to be a female. The Vermont Principals Association, the VPA, then banned the Christian high school team from playing in any future tournaments. Here was a part of a statement the VPA submitted to CNN. Quote, Mid-Vermont Christian School has every right to teach its beliefs to its own students. It cannot, however, impose those beliefs on students from other public and private schools, deny students from other schools the opportunity to play, or hurt students from other schools because of who those students are. Did you catch the hypocrisy? While the Christian school is told it cannot, quote, impose its belief on other schools and students, the VPA assumes the position that it can impose its beliefs on the Christian school and backed up by punishment. This is classic hypocrisy of the secular left in action, coupled with the power of an institution to enforce this ideology. Hypocrisy, of course, is not limited to the secular left, but hypocrisy is foundational to the secular left ideology. Here's how. Its devotees, like my friend Martin, typically defiantly and dogmatically cling to their beliefs, no matter how much evidence is arrayed against them. What they exhibit is an unwavering belief that their, quote, truth is the only truth that exists. They are so sure of this, they believe no defense of or justification for what they believe is required. The hypocrisy is that if you ask them, do you believe there is objective, absolute truth for all people, which is what the Bible teaches, they will vigorously deny it, even as they practice a dedication to the absolute truth of secular leftism. In subsequent chapters, I unpack how the secular left has weaponized the victimology of groups and how its adherents view the world through a very limited, very narrow, and very biased lens. Chapter 5 zeroes in on how astoundingly irrational and illogical secular leftism is. You will be exposed to dozens of examples, both from Martin and secular left activists and leaders, that deny reality, reject rationality, and revel in absurdity. This creates a challenging paradigm for the rest of us who believe that reasonable people can dialogue and debate reasonably and can agree to disagree agreeably. But through it all, I don't leave you, the reader, without hope. 2 chapters are devoted to actions any Christian can take to stand against the evil of secular leftism. Many of these actions are things every believer should be engaging in already, and others do not require much effort or sacrifice. The bottom line is, whether the person who doesn't subscribe to secular leftism chooses a path of blissful ignorance or blithe inaction, the ultimate consequence is that none of us will be spared from the destructiveness of secular leftism. Hiding our heads in the sand will not work. As I describe in the first chapter, Understanding the Times, our call to be ambassadors for Christ includes understanding and dealing with the culture of this world. That, I'm persuaded, is part of what Jesus meant when he said, be in the world, but not of the world. The actions we choose to take today will shape our future and the futures of our children and our grandchildren. We are not to capitulate to hopelessness, despair, or fear. We are to act and trust God for the outcomes. So, my friends, the first action I encourage you to take is to purchase this eye-opening, must-read book. Again, and I'll summarize how you can get it. You can pay for it by using Zelle and sending $8 to guy.rogers@flourishing-leadership.com. Again, that's guy.rogers, R-O-D-G-E-R-S, at flourishing-leadership.com. Then send an email to that address indicating where you want the book emailed, and I'll get it right out to you. If you would like unlimited rights to share the book, please send a payment of $75. If you prefer, you can mail a check to Flourishing Leadership, 1380 Regatta Lane, Monument, Colorado, 80132, for either $8 or $75, whichever option you choose. I believe you will find my new book compelling, eye-opening, informative, insightful, sobering while at times humorous, and likely even challenging. As I make clear in the book, secular leftism has advanced so far and so fast that the window of opportunity to successfully push back against it is limited and rapidly closing. So please purchase a copy of my new book today, and I thank you in advance for doing so. Because, as I close every podcast episode, your leadership, flourishing leadership, has never been more needed.